morning to all of you. And I'm sure from last one day since yesterday, we have all been talking about the evolving landscape about energy, hearing about huge ambitious targets, whether we are talking of achieving net zero for the world as a whole or India as a country by 2070. And then each of the organizations planning their own net zero targets and the roadmap to energy transition, and including the technological development, setting up of plants, infrastructure, or financing strategies towards meeting those huge and ambitious targets that, as we just saw and heard from a very renowned person about the targets as a state of Gujarat, how it is being planned. So I'm sure each and every state and organization have similar targets and plans to make sure that India as a country is able to meet the net zero targets much ahead of the target of 2070. And that is where we see the next phase coming up, when the organizations or the states are planning and advancing their earlier announced targets from say 2040, 2045 or 2072 earlier targets. So that is the kind of energy or passion or the commitment with which each and everyone involved in the energy sector is working towards achieving those targets. And that is where I'll beg to differ slightly from the topic where it says uncertain times. I would rather say it as the evolving times or the evolving landscape of the energy. It is becoming, as we are progressing, it is becoming more and more certain. The roadmap, the path we are going to follow is quite clear, that what we need to do, how we need to do. The plans are very clear, the targets are very clear, and the backup support, be it from the industry, be it from the government, be it from the policy making authorities, is very, very supportive and encouraging to all those who are involved in this activity. But when we have such an ambitious target of achieving a huge target or a goal as a nation or as a world, when we are talking of climate change, there's a bit of element which needs to be taken care of in terms of how do we meet those targets apart from the finance and the infrastructure other requirements. The critical element for achieving these targets is also the availability of the skilled workforce to deliver what we have promised to our own selves, to our nation or to the society at large. And that is where many a times when we go to various forums and as an industry, we always talk of non-availability of skilled workforce or ready workforce with future skills who is ready to take on these new roles, new job roles being created, not just because of the changing energy landscape or the energy transition targets, but also governed by the huge developments in terms of the digitalization or generative AI coming into. So how do we transition, not just from the energy transition point of view, but also in terms of a transition which is largely towards the skills of the manpower or the workforce who is involved in taking forward these projects. So here I stand today before you in talking about some of the issues or the strategies that will be required to build our workforce which is resilient enough to match these targets or the energy transition targets, and the industry or the sector as a whole is not grappling with the shortage of the skilled manpower in these areas. So some of the critical things which I thought which came to my mind while I was traveling today and thinking of what to speak of, and I just noted a few points, was first thing is adaptation to these clean energy transitions. We have been talking of clean energy transitions. When we talk of the energy transition, as I was just saying, there are needs or there's a growing need of skills like in the solar or in the wind or in the hydrogen, or as we were just discussing, the energy storage part also. We may build a solar park, we may build a wind park, but then there's also a need to see how we store the energy so that we are able to supply those in the times when during the night hours or when the industry is to be supplied. So how do we develop those systems? How do we integrate with the existing sources? Because one thing is very clear, that at least in the next 30 to 40 years where we are in the transition phase, the various sources of energy are going to coexist. And in the phase of coexistence, how do we maintain both the things is also becoming a challenge. Because if we talk of, say, an organization like GAIL, which is into natural gas, so what we are focusing is on to protect our core, because natural gas obviously is going to play a crucial role as a transition fuel. So we need to maintain natural gas, supply of natural gas to meet the energy requirements of the industry. But at the same time, we are also investing into solar, we are also investing into hydrogen, we are also investing into wind. So how do we maintain, and with the same workforce or a little bit of much more workforce, how do we make it much more economical, much more attractive? When we say the world is targeting of bringing down the price of green hydrogen, we are all gung-ho about green hydrogen being a fuel for the future, but we all know at the same time that the cost is one of the most critical elements which will decide how much green hydrogen is going to be successful as a fuel for the future. And if that cost has to come down, I am sure all of you will agree that it is the skilled manpower or the manpower who is involved in implementing those projects. Are they equipped with the requisite skills to bring that innovation? Because only innovation or new technologies, new developments in that area will be able to see the kind of cost reduction that we are trying to see. And there, when we talk of skills, it will end coexistence of two different areas of existing fuels base of, say, fossil fuel based fuels or natural gas versus the renewable energy. There will be one requirement of new skills, but then there will also be a requirement of upskilling the existing workforce which is involved in these critical projects. Second part, again linked to that, the same thing is when we are talking of coexisting is having a cross sector skills. Because again, when we talk of a shortage of manpower or shortage of skilled manpower, we will have to move into an era where we are having cross sector skills. It's not just a specialized skill. A debate between a specialization or a generalization is an ever going debate. So whether in this area of evolving energies and energy landscape, it is very, very important that we are able to inculcate cross sector skills within the workforce or the employees which we are having in our organization. And this becomes really important in terms of, again, when I say digitalization coming up. So these skills are not just required, energy sector professional will not only be required to be equipped about the knowledge about the solar or the energy storage, but he is also required to be equipped with the skills of digitalization or use of generative AI to get those works done. Domain knowledge or sector knowledge of only electrical engineering or renewable energy power engineering is not going to work unless he or she is also aware of the digitalization or the AI tools which are coming up or helping these sectors to bring in the energy efficiency, to ensure the safety, to reduce the cost, and to make sure the plants are operating in a very smooth and functional manner. The sector is also becoming very, very highly data driven. The decision making, the operationalization, designs, operations, and all these things are highly driven by the data now, the data analytics and the generative AI. So the need for training people or developing workforce on this digital tools or the skills is going to be a real game changer for the organizations which focus on these things. The fourth point which I wanted to talk about in terms of the workforce practices is also becoming challenges, and that is where a kind of linking to the topic of uncertainty being there in terms of the workforce practices to be developed across the countries in terms of developing the sustainable workforce practices. With the kind of labor laws emerging, India talking about new labor codes, 4 new labor codes being implemented, huge debates going on in those areas, industry demanding great amount of flexibility in terms of engagement of manpower, in terms of the rules and regulations to be complied with, and the world as a whole talking of ensuring work-life balance, that is the expectation of the younger generation who is joining the workforce. How do we strike a balance between all those things to ensure that the workforce who is engaged provides you a long-term productive activity. They are able to work, they have a very good work-life balance, stress-free working, and the world is now talking about because of all these complexities, and again where the digital is playing a huge role in terms of the emotional and mental well-being of the people who are involved. The kind of stress levels, and if we look at back at the data, we have been trying to analyze that it within our own organization. For last 10 years, the way the medical expenses of the employees are increasing, it's a real cause of concern. The way the mental health issues are coming up at the workplace is a cause of concern, or if it is not, it should be a cause of concern for each and every organization. Because all these transitions to happen in a smooth and efficient manner, the mental and emotional health of the employees is also going to be very, very critical, because only a stress-free mind, emotionally balanced mind will be able to think of and bring innovation. If the mind is stressed, they are not healthy, it will lead to not innovation not coming up, but also it may lead to accidents at the workplace. And if they are all the areas we are talking of, there is a huge concern for safety. So for safety of operations, safety of these plants and pipelines also, it is important that we focus on the emotional and mental well-being of the employees. And the last thing, which is a much talked about topic, and it can never be less to speak on the topic, is how do we collaborate with the academia and the government to bring this workforce development strategies to work in favor of the industry or the overall achievement of the targets which we have set. So this partnership between the industry, between the government and the educational institutes or the academia has to be increased. We talk about it, we talk about different kind of internships being offered, the schemes being rolled out, the new education policy being coming up, new curricula being developed. But then again, at all the times when we go, as I have been involved in the recruitment for 5 to 6 years, and when we go to the even to the premier institutes, we find that gap being there of getting people who are industry ready, who can be deployed on the work from day one. How do we really close on that gap is again what my personal experience is, when we talk of an industry collaboration with academia, there is a huge area where the industry needs to collaborate much more. And it's not only that the industry people need to move more towards industry, academia, to offer projects, to offer guest lectures or mentorship to the students, but the academic people or the professors or the course curricular development people need to move to the industry or have a stint of maybe 2 to 3 years in the industry and then go back to the teaching, so that they understand the industry problems better, and also encourage people or the workforce, qualified workforce, to join these sectors, because there is a growing tendency of qualified engineers or people moving to service sectors or IT sectors and not coming to the energy sector because of the challenging work environments being there, challenging locations being there, and that is where more collaboration or partnership between industry and academia and including government is going to work in the favor of the industry. So I'll conclude by just saying a few words in terms of that. If we are talking of building a resilient workforce in the energy sector specifically, if not in general, it requires a multifaceted approach which needs to focus on adaptation of technological advancements, adaptation or the focus towards sustainability goals, and the flexibility to manage an unpredictable future. If we are able to focus on these three things, I am sure we will be able to build a workforce which will be able to meet our challenges or targets which we are talking of a successful energy transition for the country as a nation and as a world as a whole. Thank you very much. Thanks for a patient listening.